Welcome to Loud and Clear, a program geared toward the younger generations. You can listen in every Thursday at 7 p.m. or find the plug to our YouTube channel on kgtcradio.com.
Hey, I'm Nathan.
And I'm Carlos.
And welcome to Loud and Clear. This week we are going to pick up where we left off, kind of. We're going to come back and talk about finding your call. But first, I want to go over a couple things. If you have questions for this program, you can email it to vcfrevivalyouth.com, put LC in the subject line for Loud and Clear, or you can text us at 509-402-3446. And we kind of have a highlight, something that happened in the Christian music world.
Yeah.
That was kind of cool. Do you want to?
Yeah, so I'm sure if you're cool.
If you're cool.
You know who Forrest Frank is. If you don't, find out. No, he's a music artist, super cool. I mean, he's like, I don't know. I think everybody listens to him. I know I do.
Yeah.
But he broke his back skateboarding. And I
that's how you know he's cool.
Yeah, that's how you, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I can't skateboard.
Yeah.
I'm past my prime.
Yeah.
I go to bed at 9 now. So anyways, he broke his back skateboarding, and I think it was 2 days, am I right? Or within a week or something?
Yeah.
My timing might be off, but anyways. Pretty miraculous. God healed his back.
Yeah.
And it was it was a miracle for sure.
Scans to prove it.
Yeah, he's got scans
crazy
to prove it, and everybody was just showing him support. I mean, there was so much prayer heading his way, and
Yeah.
it was just undeniable.
Yeah.
It was a miraculous healing, and so that's super cool. Obviously, God has a plan for his life, and I think it's cool that somebody that loves God is getting so much attention from the media. That's
Oh yeah, and it's evident in everything he does. I genuinely feel. When I listen to his music, I don't know. I feel like there's people out there that are just trying to be cool.
Yeah.
But I genuinely feel like everything that he's produced, the clarity of his songs, and just unashamed in what he's the message and what he mashes up. Sometimes he'll mash up some old stuff with some new stuff, and just all around, I think pretty cool. I think he genuinely has a heart for the Lord, and. But I don't know if you knew this, but he passed up Drake on streams.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
I was watching somebody on they were reviewing it, I think on YouTube or something YouTube Music.
Wow. Or
Spotify or something like that. But he passed up Drake on it. They were like, this is crazy. Millions and millions. But yeah, he's super talented, super awesome. But I actually have a question for you on this because I saw this, and this is kind of it was for somebody that was definitely just has a rough life, I'm sure, and has seen a lot of probably pretty cynical about the world and the state of the world. But they're just questioning why choose to heal, someone that's in the public eye versus people that are struggling in third world countries, stuff like that. When somebody asks you that, when you see stuff like that, what goes through your heart?
Honestly, the first thing that always comes to my mind is I feel like those things we will just never understand. If I try to understand it, I never will.
Yeah.
I have had to over and over and over just been God, you know better than I do. Yeah. And it's hard as a human being to not get your emotions involved in those things. And emotions aren't bad. They can be good. Mm-hmm. But I've tried my hardest to learn God knows better than I do, and he knows that, I just don't know. I have to trust that he has a plan, and I don't have to fully understand that plan.
Yeah.
I just have to trust him.
Yeah.
And as hard as it can be sometimes, too many times I've just been God, and I just have to believe, and I have to continue to walk and just because I think Satan loves that question because it really makes you think. And it really makes you well, if he's such a good God, why would he do that for that person, but not for this person?
Yeah. And
you can't allow your mind to go there. You can't even think like that.
Yeah.
And some of those things you just can't dwell on too much because you can't make sense of it anyways. You know, you can't it's kind of when people are say well, where did God come from? Yeah. Well, we can't understand that because our minds are unable to process or even imagine that he always just has been.
Yeah.
He nobody created him. He just was. He just is, and the fact that time itself. He created time, so he's not affected by time, and so it's like those things you can't comprehend, and I try not to because we can't anyways. And so I think that questions for me a lot of the time is just coming back to I just have to trust God that He knows why, and I have to trust that He knows better than I do, and He does, but those questions are always hard, and we're gonna get those questions, and I think the best thing to do in those situations is just to love on that person, because I feel like those people asking those questions have been hurt. Maybe there was somebody that they loved, and they were maybe they felt like they deserved to get the healing and not somebody else, and that hurts, and that can cause pain, and Satan will use that to feel anger towards God. And I think just loving that person, loving them to the right place, loving them right where they're at, and explaining to them, that you don't have the answers, and that's okay, but if you trust God, eventually you'll reach a place where you just understand that He knows best.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I mean, understand that it's a big roadblock and can trip up, especially young believers. If you're in high school and you get questions like that why, if God's so good, why does He allow this, and things like that. And sometimes it's really hard because you get it from a place of just somebody completely frustrated. And this is kind of goes along with this. It's not necessarily the direction that I thought I would go, but it kind of can interfere. It can hurt your faith. And like we were talking about in the previous one, is that faith is in line with your call, and faith produces your call. And there was things that, like, Abraham didn't understand why he was asked to sacrifice his son, and then all of a sudden, obviously, God intervened at the last moment. And that's kind of what I was going to get into. But, like, God will test the sincerity of your faith, and God will test your faith, and these things are tests for the believer. They really are, and especially for a young believer. And I mean, like, again, you're so right on. It's like you can't really explain. And I think sometimes just admitting that, not trying to claim that you have an answer, kind of disarms a little bit. But I do feel like there's things that we just have to realize that, first of all, eternity, completely different to God than it is to us.
Absolutely.
Death and life, completely different to God, because this is such a small life. And I think that we think of good and evil really incorrect. We do, because our nature is wrong. Our sin nature, even if we're a good person, usually there's self-intent, selfish intent that can become a monster. Even in the socially, they seem like the best person in the world, but they're selfish, self-centered. And you could probably pick apart somebody like that, but, like, genuinely. And then you look at people that are kind of innocent, third world countries, but it says in the Word, and I Pastor Cindy, that's part of her testimony, like, she struggled a long time with, when she was young, there was things that happened to her that shouldn't have happened to her. And she felt like God gave her some understanding, which, again, the hard part about this is oftentimes God gives the understanding in relationship with Him, but you have to trust Him first. You do. And it was just word that she said, it was out of the scripture where it says, I looked to and fro, across the earth. I was looking for somebody, and found none, and it was like how, especially in foreign countries and places like that, it's like looking for somebody to make an impact, looking for somebody to come and speak life and encouragement, and there not being anybody. And that's the reason why, like, I still feel like, I mean, the mission field in our own country is super important, but the mission field still has value to other countries, absolutely, for sure. Because that's what we're talking about, is these I mean, it's our duty, as the Christians. And if anything, like, don't be angry at God. Look at the church and be like, hey guys, like, we need to continue to like pursue the call of God, so that these things everybody can receive the gospel. And you have the enemy at work too. You have oppression in countries that don't know God, that's trying to suffocate and trying to not allow the gospel in. And you have people that somehow still get the gospel and their lives are transformed immediately. Like, the power of God when you see, like, a small town in Africa get to hear about the word of God and people get radically changed, healed, and things do happen. It's not like that doesn't happen. Healings do happen. And oftentimes I think it's because there's a purity of faith there.
Absolutely.
Genuinely, like more than we could ever know in America. And so we challenge and we think about people getting healed and not getting healed, but our faith is kind of skewed.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes. And but what a person to have a healing. As much as, he might have a lot of followers, he might have a lot of streams, he might seem like he's got it going on. But if anything, it just brings more glory to God.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Really does. Like he's, a song came out of it, like things came out of the situation, but things like, why would you not heal somebody to equip them to then pursue
exactly
and further the kingdom of God? And so, but God also has, like, he's merciful, he's loving, he's kind. And I don't know, somebody asking that question of why, if God's so good, that confuses them to think that God's so merciful, kind, and whatever. But sometimes mercy, we don't understand. Sometimes somebody going home to be with Jesus is actually mercy.
Yeah.
Sometimes somebody, if it brings them to the end of themselves, going through a health crisis.
Yep.
It sounds really bad, right? But like genuinely, there's been times in my life to where I went through some back stuff, and I know you did too. If anything, it drew me, it put me to my knees spiritually.
Yeah, absolutely.
It did.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't know what your experience with that, if that even had an impact on you spiritually when you went through that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it was like 9 months of, it was terrible. I wouldn't wish it on anybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I physically couldn't do anything, and so I just laid in bed, and that time that I got to spend with God was, I mean, I wouldn't want to go through that again, but I'm glad that I did, because it brought me to a deeper relationship with Christ. It just, it made me cry out, and it made me, it wasn't even, I mean, at first it was like, God, like, get me through this, like, heal me. And then it turned into like, God, I just want to know you.
Yeah.
Like, I want, like, that's what God, everything that happens in our life, God's always trying to bring you deeper, in relationship with him. And I've, people will ask, well, like the book of Job, you can look at it and you can read it and you can be like, well, why would God allow this? Like, why did God bring him up in the first place to be tested? And if you read the book of Job, like 3/4 of the way in, Job says, like, before all this, I had heard of you, but now I have seen you. And I think, in my opinion, if nothing more, God used all that to bring Job to a deeper relationship with God. And sometimes that's all we need. Sometimes that's the best answer, is God is allowing things, and you're going through things, but it's all to draw you closer to God.
Yeah.
My dependency on God as I grow spiritually should grow. I should constantly, it's not like we're trying to get to a place to where we no longer depend on God. We're trying to get to a place where we only depend on God. Like, I'm depending on him for everything, not some things, but everything.
Yeah.
Which is backwards with the way we're raised. We're raised to be independent. We're raised to go out and get a job. Or, we're raised to be independent people. But in your relationship with God, God wants you to be fully dependent on him for everything, and so I think that's always a battle. But no, that season of my life was amazing. I mean, as much as it hurt and physically, spiritually, it was a blessing. It really was, because it brought me closer to God, and it made, it wasn't like, God, give me something. It was just like, God, I want to know you. Like, I want to know who you are, and I want to know your character, and I want to grow from this situation and this experience. And so it was a beautiful thing. And it just goes to speak of how merciful God is, that he can take a situation that's terrible, that looks terrible, but use it for his glory,
Definitely. No, and that's super good. And it's cool how you were bringing up Job, because, like, if you think about Job, and I think about all the blessings that he had before, right? And I think about it's funny how the enemy is, like, the enemy's sly. Yeah. Right? But the enemy also, at the same time, was super unintelligent. Yeah. And the fact that I think that Job would have been closer to falling if he would have been able to stay in his comfort than he was when it was all ripped away and God gave it back twice as much. Like, when we're challenged in life, when we do go through things, but we decide to trust God, we come out like been there, done that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
yeah.
I've been through the fire. God has refined me. In fact, I'm stronger.
Yeah.
You know, how do you make steel stronger? You refine it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
yeah.
and you make it tougher and tougher and tougher by fire. And sometimes we don't realize, but that's truth.
Yeah.
Is that your call will be developed sometimes by fire, sometimes by things you don't understand. But if your faith remains, you know, if you decide to be dependent on God and go, God, you know, it's the hardest place to be because the world will tell you to get bitter, to get angry. You have a right to be upset, and you might have genuinely bad things happen to you. Read Job. I mean, there's some rough stuff that's happened there. But that might be your life. You might have been through almost everything, but if you choose to position yourself in a place of, I'm going to trust my God. Yeah. You know, and I mean, I think God is a gracious God. I think God is going to meet you in those places. And the things that might seem like might wreck other people might be something to where you walk through hard times, but there's hope. Yeah. You know, and I genuinely feel like with my back stuff that I had been through and have kind of walked through a little bit still, I feel like God told me that, I mean, not only did it drive me to my knees, you know, medical costs, things like that. I mean, money and all the different stuff. But also I feel like God spoke to me through it. And there was a season where I felt like I couldn't sit for very long. Yeah. That was the biggest thing, is I couldn't sit down on a chair. But I feel like God was like, it was kind of weird because God wasn't trying to hurt me, but it was like, basically what I was feeling God was saying is like, I haven't called you to sit, I've called you to stand. Yeah. You know, and not necessarily physically, but it was just a representation that I feel like God was like speaking to me. It's like, I haven't called you to sit.
I think that's cool. I was just thinking while you were talking, like, God is the only person, the only thing, whatever you want to call it, that will make sense of everything you've been through. Yeah. Like, in time, if you will trust him, if you will be faithful, in time, he will make sense of all the pain and all the hurt and everything you've gone through. Yeah. And it's just amazing. I look back on my life and I can genuinely say that I've been through some terrible things, but God has made sense of it all. Yeah. Like, in time, God has made sense of why I had to go through some of the things that I went through, whether it was, you know, self-inflicted or done to me. God has made sense of those things, and there's been like genuine healing, and God has used those things. And so, you know, if you've had a tough life, God can answer some of those questions that you have that maybe I can't or anybody else can't, but God can bring you that peace, that assurance, that answer that you need. God's not afraid of why. God, why did you allow this? As a matter of fact, I think that as you grow, you know, those questions are going to happen, and God can answer those. God's not afraid. God's not going to be angry at you for asking, God, why did this happen in my life? He welcomes those questions, and in time, he will answer those. He'll give you the peace, and he'll give you the understanding. And if he doesn't give you the answer, he'll give you the strength to just continue to walk and trust that, you know, that there was a reason for why you went through what you went through. Yeah. And we don't always need to understand all those things, but for my life, most of the whys that I have had, God has answered most of those in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. You know, and so absolutely. I think that's another thing that's super important to, you know, for young believers to understand is God will make sense of those things. Yeah. He really will.
Yeah. God will bring comfort to you, and he'll do that. I mean, it's hard because it's like, again, if we rest or we lay in our bitterness, you know, we'll never get the explanation, you know. And I can't remember what pastor, if it was Pastor Paris Reagan that was speaking. I feel like it was, but it could have been any of our pastors, honestly, because I think it was just around that time where something was spoken that was like, you're either going to kind of like complain and find a group and talk about the things that you've been through. Like, maybe what could have been your testimony is something that you like complain about. You know, like you weren't brought through it. You were just like, you went through it, but you weren't like on the other side of it. Like, I want to speak from a perspective of being on the other side. Like, I walked through this. I came through this strong. I came and I've been there, done that. God brought me through, versus being like, have this victim mentality of like, oh, I went through this season, really battling, really struggling. And man, I know what you're going through. I've been there. It really sucks, doesn't it? Like, you know, this is just, man, life is terrible. You know, we can live in that perspective, and we can share, and we could talk, and we can complain to each other, and we can be there, or we could be like, no, God brought me through. and God put me on the other side of this, and you can get through it too, and not have a perspective of not be wounded, not have a victim mentality about what you've been through, but honestly be like, you know what, I went through that, but I'm stronger because of it. God has taken it and made a testimony through it, and sometimes your testimony is not just to keep inside, it's for other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's been true of our lives. There's been things where I'm like, God, why am I going through this? Why? And I think you were saying a little bit too, and it's like God ends up using it.
Yeah.
Every time God ends up using it at some point in your life. But anyway, I feel like we have a question here. I feel like, because I didn't get I got a notification, but I didn't know. So I just know my wife. I know she sent one. Okay, Job 3:7. Speaking of Job.
I know that guy.
Why did Job curse the day of his birth?
Can you blame the guy? No. But I think, you can look at that and be like, you got to remember when Satan came to heaven, he told God he's going to curse you. Like, that's what he wanted Job to do. The whole, everything is he wanted Job to curse God and die. That's what Satan's plan was. That's what he thought was going to happen with all this. But I think, the bigger thing with Job saying that is that even though he's feeling this way, he's still talking to God. He's still bringing, he's hurting so badly, and he's endured so much at this point, and he's gonna go through more, but he knows he can take it to God. Yeah. He never cursed God.
Yeah, exactly.
He never lost faith.
Yeah.
But he knew he was going, and we can learn so much from this. Is you might be going through hell, but you can still communicate that God's not going to be upset with you if you come to him and you're like, God, my day sucks. God, I'm going through this and I feel like you're not here. I feel like you're not hearing me. I feel like you're not seeing me. I feel like you've abandoned me. God, I feel like you're nowhere to be seen. And that's basically what Job is saying. He's saying, God, I wish I was never born. Yeah. Because if I wouldn't have been born, this wouldn't be happening. Yeah. But it's powerful to me that he knew that God loved him enough to where he could come to him and say, God, this is what I'm going through. Exactly. God, I'm going through so much pain that this is how I feel. But the bigger thing is he's still talking with God. Yeah. He's still, there's pain, but his faith never left. He still had faith. There was still faith that God, was who he said he was. And for me, I always tend to look at it in the opposite way. But I mean, you could just say, he what he is saying is if I was never born, this wouldn't be happening to me. Yeah. But I think the bigger thing, like I said, is that he still had faith in God. He never doubted God. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I mean, think about that. Like, your life is producing pain now. Yeah. Like, because of you, this is where Job's at. I mean, it's not even just about him. It's about the people around him. They're confused. That's probably questioning their faith in God. Raising questions. His wife lost those kids too. Yeah. All this different stuff. Like, there's things that are happening that it's like pain and pain and pain. And so, and that's the thing is, like, if you're dealing with depression and stuff too, it's like God's not afraid of you talking about it. God's not going to be offended if you're like, God, what's my purpose? Why was I born? What is, and for all of you out there, like, God has a purpose for you. And it was Job's faith that carried him into that, exactly. Right? Yeah. And so it's like faith is what carries you into the call of God. And having faith through that time is like letting God have time to show you. You might be going through a season where you're being radically attacked by the enemy, but I love that. Like you said, it's like, be real with God. Yeah. Tell him what you're feeling. Like, he didn't curse God. Yeah. He was like essentially being like, God, why was I even born? Yeah. Like, what's my purpose? Yeah. Well, if this is just going to be the way it is, God's not afraid of that question. No, absolutely not.
I think that's super good. But anyway, so that's going to be it for today. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you next time on Loud and Clear.
Deuce.
Deuce. I love that.
Tune in to Loud and Clear every Thursday at 7 p.m. or listen online at kgtcradio.com.